Hey guys, welcome to today's podcast of I Will Not Be Ignored. So, about 5 years ago, I went on a personal journey of just inward, of really wanting to make changes in my life, feeling stuck and not happy where I was, started thinking about the things I was doing and how I could make that change. And part of that process was really listening to my inner voice and really get a better understanding of who am I, what do I want, and having a voice in saying it. And over the years, I've been working through this journey. I had the privilege of meeting my co host, and together we understood that we shared similar sentiments.
So this is the platform where we really talk about common human experiences. Everyone goes through them, but no one really seems to talk about them. So here's the forum where we address them, we acknowledge them, and we empower each other.
Absolutely, Jenny. Hi, everyone. My name's Cleo. Very excited to be here and co-hosting with Jenny and Tova about this podcast. I think overall for me, I'm a very direct person. I always say things in my mind, but it has been backlash me at workplaces. And now all of us are providing a platform for us to openly discuss topics that I was withholding.
Awesome. So for today's topic, we want to talk about toxic workplace. And before we really get into the conversation, I just want to take a moment because I know it's such a big buzzword. Like we all hear about it, and I think it means something different for everyone else. So really, for today's conversation, I was hoping to use this topic more of a, what does that mean to you? What does that mean to you in your workplace, and what does that mean to you as an individual? And how do you think about, a toxic workplace or a toxic relationship?
So who wants to go first in terms of sharing her toxic workplace experience?
I can go first. I have a very interesting one. Kind of just give everyone the background. I have been in the job force about 7 to 8 years or so. And in my earlier career, that's when I just graduated from school, got into a new job. I started my career in finance, in investment banking. It was very interesting in terms of how sexism is so obvious in workplaces.
Is that your first time that you've experienced this?
Yes, absolutely. In my school, it was pretty well cultured, and I don't feel that much of gap there. But in the workplace especially in investment banks, I really felt like people really felt they're very privileged over you. And the way how they speak, address things, and talk to you naturally carries that way. For my specific example, it was a coworker. I've been working at the investment bank for like 2.5 or 3 years already in. So I'm new, but not someone new in my career already. And this male coworker, I never worked with him before, but because I was switching to a new team at the time and I was like already in the new team for half a year, so I understand the workflow already, like how everything works. He came from the team that I joined, and then he was kind of just helping out because we were really understaffed at that time. It was me, another girl who's younger than me. I trained her. We are working on this process together. Me and the girl were just working totally fine. We're like, we have our stuff on our screen, we're ready, but we're like chilling. It's like, okay, we're monitoring, but nothing's going on. We're just chilling. We're talking. But to the other guy's perspective, and kind of give you more context here, he's an associate level, so he's a senior than me, and I was an analyst, and the other girl was also an analyst. Literally, he just came right behind us. He's like, "What are you guys doing? Why are you guys chatting?" Very loud. Again, that it's a very open floor with a lot of people on the floor, and when he said so loud, everyone kind of like stopped and like, what is going on? And me and the girl, we were kind of shocked. So I turned around, like, his name, we'll just say Bob. We'll say Bob. And I was like, Bob, we're working, but like we're monitoring stuff. He's like, you're clearly not monitoring. You're not looking at it. The other girl is freaking out. She's completely like shut down, like in like stoned shock. And I turn around. I said in a very, very, very calm voice, what is the problem over here? Like, we're working. You want to see our screen? I can show you the screen. What's going on? I know exactly what's happening within the process right now. So I'm not sure why you're raising your voice and like talking to us in this way. When I say that in a very calm way, very low tone, but all people heard it, managers on the same aisles all heard it. He turned tomato red on his face. But because I don't think from someone who's me, like Asian, has going directly respond to him as a white male, and he again doesn't know how to de-escalate, so he actually raised his voice again, like shout out, what are you guys doing? At that point, that becomes like third time. At that point, I was mad and frustrated. And I really told him, what is the big deal over here? We can talk outside about this. If this is something involved with work, We're literally doing the work. I'm not sure why you're shouting out over here. At that time, manager just kind of stepped in. The girl next to me, she's younger. She looks like she's about to cry. Coming from someone who's a senior associate level and under everyone's attention, like you're screaming at two girls, different race, Asian and Hispanic, from a white male. It seems a very dominant. And it just came across very, either that's racist or sexist. I did not know at the time, but I just know that it was not right. That to me was pure attack. He's not my manager. He's not any of our manager. He was just associate. And because he felt entitled and he's associate, he can talk to us like that. If you're my manager, if I'm not doing my job well, fine. You have your excuse, you have your reason. But if you're not my manager, you're really just helping out with the team. And don't act like you're so entitled. It's not that like I'm not taking feedback or the other girl's not taking feedback. We're happy to take feedback. The thing is that we're actually working, but you made it sound like we're not working. We're just chatting about shopping and doing work. I literally said to him to his face, I can show you exactly what's happening right now if you can calm down yourself.
What do you think like gave him that like courage to behave that way, or like the permission, or he felt that was okay? Like, especially like on a big floor where everyone's out there, like no shame,
No shame. No shame.
like was that what was promoted in the workplace at that time?
I think it's more particular about him. I'm not gonna say like white male plays, it's always white male.
Right.
It's not the case. I have a lot of white male coworkers. They were fantastic. They're awesome. They're caring and all that. He is more like a special case.
That was like within yourself that gave you that courage to actually de-escalate, and like, I mean, this happened in seconds, so we're talking about
Yes.
like not losing it, not, crying, not shutting down, but actually like addressing it straight on, but also in a very diplomatic way at the same time.
Great question, Tova. I broke down
Mm-hmm.
after I dealt with him. I
Mm-hmm.
broke down. I cried in the bathroom. I'm like, I cannot take this. But
Mm-hmm.
in that split second when he coming at us, like more towards me rather than the other girl because the other girl's more junior, they coming at me like that. I don't know. It's like more instinct. I can scream, shout back at him. But
Mm-hmm.
with doing that, that's gonna make me look really bad and immature and unprofessional. And in
So
that
you
moment, like that
calculated
gut,
within seconds, like,
right? Yeah, and my gut was telling me do it another way. I remember in that split second, I'm like, do I scream back at him, be my normal self and revenge, or do I just talk to him in a very calm way? I did the latter, and which really has helped with my reputation, across the aisles, across managers, the way how they see me, how I handling conflicts. I must
Mhm.
turn red too. I was furious inside, but I withheld that part. I'm like, I'm gonna hold it so tightly that I'm not gonna let any of those negative emotions or any of those like I want to fight you kind of mentality coming out. I'm gonna calm you down so you can look really bad in front of managers.
Afterwards is when you were able to process what
Yes,
happened.
I sat on my desk. I gave it like 2 minutes to calm myself down, and I'm like, I cannot hold my emotion anymore because I felt very attacked and like being looked down upon. Gave myself at the desk 2 minutes. I'm like, okay, I can't handle this emotions. I walked to the bathroom, quietly cried in the bathroom.
How did management deal with Bob? How did this all pan out?
Our manager pulled us into a room and I explained my part and he explained his part, which is not logical at all because he's just saying they're just chatting. But we can chat, but we're doing our work. Is anything
There are
missed?
rules about
Did
talking in the
anything
workplace.
right? Is there anything that's missing or is there any issue that's caused by our chit chat? Nothing. So what's the point of you raising like that? Like, is there like did we really fucking up big time by chatting? No. So there is no logic or reason behind it. He just taking out his frustration. Maybe he had a bad day that morning. The manager made him apologize, but I just don't feel like it's a genuine apology. And it's funny, like on the table when we're discussing the issue, I said my part, and there are two managers. One of the manager is my direct manager, and other manager is above him. The bigger manager was like, if you guys really having problem with each other, take it outside of work. Take it for a walk and just like scream at each other and just like curse at each other when you like, when you're doing little session outside. It's funny. I laughed when he's saying that. I'm like, it's not gonna possibly be happening like that? Like, if
Hmm.
I'm just having a bad day, I'm not gonna grab Bob and be like, I'm cursed at you. No, we're not like trash cans. Like, we're not punching back. You can't telling me, hey, just take your shit outside. It doesn't help me. Doesn't help me that much. I'm a little
Manager.
disappointed. I got an apology, but like the damage has already been done.
Yeah, I mean, this is an example of an individual in a workplace and his
Yes,
behavior towards women or towards
right.
subordinates, feeling
Yes,
superior. So whether it be
that's right.
female or whether it be, a higher level of authority that gave him entitled to be able to, and he wasn't even embarrassed or ashamed of the way he acted.
No, not at all. Like he actually like screamed louder, like shout out louder 3 times because he knows he got nothing to say back to me. And I think intentionally by him saying the second and third time like louder, it will shut me down and not like put me into like more of like less position that I'm like, okay, I'm not gonna go back to it anymore. I will like shrink myself and like I will be like, all right, Bob, okay, fine, you know.
Yeah,
No, I
yeah, I
did not.
definitely
I
see
voice it
where
up.
men.
You're trying to shut me down and press me down, but I'm going back strongly. That's where I think manager stepped in when I respond to him the third time. If manager doesn't step in, I don't even know what he's gonna do because I felt embarrassed for him. I mean, I can embarrass you more in a very polite and professional way if you want to continue with this. So I find
Right.
it funny.
Like
Yeah,
he behaved poorly, but you have to respond like with the appropriate manner. That's like,
right.
like people's bad behavior, and therefore we're held accountable in some regard of how we respond to that, of what we're gonna.
And what I really appreciate after this event happened, a female manager pulled me aside. She's like, "You did fantastic." The way how a female manager, again, female manager, not a male manager, a female manager said, "Whatever you did, fantastic. That's how you're supposed to handle it. Great job for not escalating." Again, a female,
Yeah.
a female manager acknowledged what I did from a female perspective rather than male. Because male for male, it's like
Well, you said the
you
guy
go
was
back to
like,
them.
go take it outside, where the
Right.
female was like, you handled yourself correctly. She gave
That's
empowerment,
right.
where the other guy was like, I don't want to have to deal with this in the workplace. Take it out.
Another male manager from a different team, but he sits like across the table from me, grabbed me on the side. He's like, "Are you okay?" Like, I just, I heard everything. Like, I hope everything's okay. And I really respect that. Like, I think manager and a manager, there's so big of difference, with
Hmm.
between the managers. And I wasn't even under like his team from my direct managers. Like, they were supporting, but I wasn't felt so like heart warm, like warm hearted,
Right, like
support.
embraced and like
Yeah.
validated.
And
It was just like they just did what they had to as a manager. Like,
right.
we have to make sure like everything is kept, calmly. So we're just gonna go through that
And
process.
so I've experienced like kind of
Yeah.
different
Do you think
perspectives.
because the way the management handled the situation kind of allowed that behavior? Meaning this guy didn't feel like he didn't catch himself from behaving and he carried on because it wouldn't be a big problem. Like he wouldn't get like slapped on the wrist for it. So it made it okay.
I don't think it was okay, but I think given like how unserious they solved the issue, I think it made him feel like, oh, it's not a big deal. But it's a big deal for us, for me as a female,
Hmm.
an Asian female especially. There is a lot of, unfortunately, in the workplace. I was talking to my friends yesterday. An Asian female work in a male dominant industry. Typically, the perception of Asian female is you're more quiet, you're more reserved, you don't really voice up, you just let things happen to you, and you kind of just like
You accept
you
it and
took
you,
it,
yeah.
you accepted it, you took it, right? But versus me, I'm different. I'm completely opposite of that. I can be loud. I address my things. I voice up about myself.
So he was expecting you to like be silent and like get
Yeah,
in line and behave and just keep quiet. He wasn't expecting a response from you to like question his authority or,
right,
and that's why he got louder. It's like, who are you? Who do you
right,
think you are? Questioning what I just said. Like,
right,
you're this analyst, you're Asian female analyst, like do your job because I said so.
right. That's absolutely what you just said, Tova.
Hmm.
Absolutely, 100% agree with that. I just felt like he thought I would just be shut down, like be quiet and be like, okay, Bob, like fine, even though I was doing my job. It's a way
Yeah.
of showing authority and show like, okay, I'm monitoring those two girls because they're like younger than me. Oh, look, manager, I'm doing a great job. No, it backfired on him. So, and I make sure, And I think that in that split second, when he first come at me, I knew I need to embarrass him. But I'm going to embarrass him in a very professional way.
Embarrassed enough to stop the behavior, but not in a way that I come across as the
As I'm
emotional,
right.
irrational.
How did that experience impact your perhaps loyalty to the company, your tenure at the company, your perceptions about even just being thrown into that environment day to day?
That experience definitely has a bit of stain in terms of my experience overall with the company. I still got to perform. I still got to be professional because that's the perception that people have on you, and that will impact my future. And I think that's, the gut feeling, the gut reaction when I'm handling that situation as well. I have to carry myself well. I have to, as a female, I need to set more as an example, like Asian female, set as example. You can speak up, but you can do it in a very professional way.
I want to give everyone a chance to talk about their own experiences about, toxic work environments or toxic coworkers that they have encountered. So kind of want to pass that over to Jenny. If you have any of those experience that's similar to mine or anything you want to share.
Thanks, Cleo. I've actually been thinking quite a bit about this, and considering that I've been in the workforce longer than you, I have a lot more stories to tell. I think one that immediately comes to mind, and this happened when I was very young, was that I was working at an office and it was very busy. The phones were ringing off the hooks. And a friend of my boss, not a colleague, but a friend, called our office and gave me a number for me to jot down to give to my manager. When she tried to call her friend back, I must have made some sort of mistake in terms of the telephone number. And instead of pointing it out in a very professional manner, I mean, we've all made mistakes, correct? She proceeded to run around the entire office proclaiming that I was dyslexic and that it's okay and that
Like in a joking way or like
no, she was dead serious, and again proclaimed throughout the entire office, you're dyslexic, you're dyslexic. Please make sure going forward that you triple check whenever you have to write down a telephone number. I remember that quite vividly, and how I think nowadays that can be grounds for litigation.
Mm-hmm.
She never trusted me after that, which was also...
That's a strange thing. A, that's like another woman, and that B, the other thing, like the inflexibility on a phone number. Like to me, like if you have a relationship, or how long have you been working there at that time?
I think probably a few months.
So like you have a track record, so to speak. Like it's not like you're brand spanking new and she doesn't know what your work ethic is and what your contribution is. So to me, that like really upsets, like it rubs me the wrong way that A, she can be supportive to another woman, and that you've proven yourself, you did good work until then. You made one mistake. It was super busy. Like the inability to be understanding.
Agreed. So that's one experience where I think it just ruined the whole environment for me, in terms of thinking that my manager thinks that I have some sort of deficiency, in that she doesn't trust me. But in terms of the most recent, I was part of an organization that was really going through a lot of reorgs. The team that I was hired to manage was pretty much decimated in terms of all of these rounds of layoffs. And like any org, there are less people, but the same amount of work, and which I try to take on out of my professionalism and just the high esteem that I carry for myself in terms of the level of work and the quality of work. And I was reporting into a manager who unfortunately just didn't have the professional maturity, as well as perhaps any sort of business model, or rather role model to follow in terms of seeing her staff being overwhelmed. I had
Like
to
leadership in challenging times is
exactly.
testimony to someone's ability to be a leader.
Very well said. Yes, it is.
You might give
And
us like a little like specific example, like in terms of in some situations, what does she do that makes you feel very unprofessional? That made you felt that she was very unprofessional in her role.
so we had to do timesheets, or rather fill out timesheets. So it was on paper in terms of the number of hours that I personally was clocking in at the
Mm-hmm.
office. And this was going on for actually several weeks, if not months, due to the lack of resources that we had, where I was working on holidays, I was working on weekends, clocking in
That's
60 plus
insane.
hours a week. I've had discussions with her about trying to get headcount, which we were able to procure from management. But as you know, it's difficult to find the most qualified candidate, an appropriate candidate for a role. So it was taking time. And I thought that I would take the high road and do the most appropriate thing, which was to have a heart-to-heart session with this person, not as manager and employee, but as two grown
Mm-hmm.
adults
Right.
having a very professional conversation about the number of hours that I was working and not seeing any light at the end of the tunnel. And this person listened, but then just really didn't know what to say. And
Was it the inability to communicate effectively or the inability to lead effectively?
it was the inability to lead effectively. This person didn't have an answer. And so I thanked this person for listening and thought that it would really help this person steer the ship in terms of management. But due to the pressure that this person was facing from her managers, people in general don't deal with pressure well, particularly if you're of a certain caliber or level of seniority, as well as certain salary band. They're really fighting to hold on to their jobs. And instead of acknowledging all of these discussions and the documentation and the heart-to-hearts that we had, all of a sudden I became the punching bag and the person to blame to her managers as to why these projects were not going well.
I'm just very curious,
So I
because I'm
wanted to,
coming more from a junior role, right? And the way how I'm seeing it, the most ideal manager is that when I raise a concern, like heart-to-heart conversation, which we all do in our parts of career, but the angle and perspective could be different. And my ideal one is when I'm expressing openly about my struggles, my concerns, and how I would envision an ideal manager will listen, acknowledge, and even he or she doesn't need to know how, or doesn't need to have an answer, but at least telling me or comfort me that, hey, I heard you, and we're actively looking for solution. We're actively working on it. Like, this is something, the current situation is unfixable right now. This is how we're living under. I can totally acknowledge you, like Jenny, about your feeling about there's no light under the tunnel, like in front of the tunnel. But however, we're actively resolving the issue. At least that level of comfort, that's what I would expect from a manager. So I'm just curious, do you think her as a manager, does she ever manage people in the right way? Was she ever in that situation before to prep her or equip her to handle situations like that? Does she want to, or is it she not trained or anything like that from your perspective?
I think it's all of the above. And it's unfortunate because I think, particularly where in
Mm-hmm.
general people tend to be younger and inexperienced and can climb the ladder very fast, they don't have that level of experience and maturity to deal with situations like this from a point of empathy and compassion. And also, I think you hit the nail on the head. I didn't necessarily want this person to wave a magic wand and provide a solution.
Mm-hmm.
I wanted this
Right.
person to tell me and to prove to me that this person has my back.
So here's two questions I have. Were you in a mental state and frame of mind where you were able to articulate, I wish you just had my back? And if you were, was this person able to even hear that if you had said that?
That's a great question, Tova. During these conversations I had with my manager, I told this person about how all of the work was really taking a toll on my mental, physical, and emotional health. The situation just devolved into one where, you know, when you end up on someone's shit list.
I've been there before. Were you able
This
to
is
talk it? Oh yeah, with other people, like get
Yes.
advice of how to talk to this person, or get them to listen, or even a leadership or a HR person to be like help navigate this, or this was you on your own?
It was me on my own. I was friendly with someone in executive management. I told this person about the situation. And I think when people are in crisis mode, it's completely cover your ass mode too. And he understood. He said this was all in line with her behavior, and this person had a notorious reputation, but he's not going to put his neck out to try to protect me or save me.
What? So this is where I get confused by companies. Like, why is the behavior known, identified, yet it's not going to be root cause and address, and we're going to keep it status quo? So it's either you survive it, the wave, you ride the wave, survive it, or sink or swim.
Exactly. And then the paper trail started coming, just complete disregard of the previous conversations that we had. What else?
So what was going through your mind, or were you able to even process what was happening, you know?
I think it was disbelief.
I mean,
You're like a
by
shock.
hearing it, by me hearing it, it's kind of disbelief on my end as well. How is that even possible? Like as a
And
manager.
this is more senior career. Like you yourself are in a senior management role. This
Mm-hmm.
isn't like you're starting out your career even.
Exactly. And again, I stress we had these heart to hearts, and instead of backing off, again, just kept piling the work.
So like you being honest worked against you in this
Yes,
situation.
correct.
And at these days and age, it's the opposite. Like, you know, earlier in my career, like we were always told like, keep your professional life and work life separated. And that's like, was how you dealt with things, and everyone had this facade of like picture perfect, and you show up for work and like, there's no interruption. And now today's day and age, it's like, bring your whole self, right? It's your full self, sets you aside, makes you unique. It's what they embrace. But in Jenny's situation, it sounds like this was actually held against you.
It was. And having tried to process this, I think the honesty did work against me, because I think in this person's mind, I got on the shit list because it was kind of like, you can't handle it. And our
Mhm.
last one on one, she talked to me so disrespectfully that I was shaking afterwards. I had trouble sleeping and eating all weekend. And then my gut just told me it's time for you to go. And long story short, without any sort of safety net, I resigned because I refused to be treated that way. And I was thinking about this. They always say don't burn bridges, but
Mhm.
this person burnt the bridge first.
And I'm really happy that you like voice yourself and step up in situation. Because I know a lot of like even myself, if I'm put myself in your shoes, how would I respond?
I wanted to be professional and give the full 2 weeks. And when I spoke to HR about this, I did break down in tears
Hmm.
because I said, I owe it to my staff. And that's how it ended.
It fascinates me that a company hears it, they try to validate you, they kind of address it, but they don't. And then nothing's changed, it seems like, it sounds like. So whether you stay or go, it sounds like this behavior is continuing. And it fascinates me that that exists still today.
If I had,
Well, I think it's because, and in my career, I've never heard, and I've met some very toxic managers. I don't hear of many stories of someone being terminated because he or she was a toxic manager.
that's already a very apparent thing that you know this person is not suited for this type of role and not is not able to work with people underneath the management style. What was the, I guess, from your Jenny, from your story, what was the thing that you learned the most from, these two experiences that you have, especially the later one that's very taunting to me?
Treat everyone with respect. And particularly someone who's actually going above and beyond. As I stressed, I was clocking in over 60 hours a week.
To me that says someone who doesn't take ownership of their behavior and is literally like putting the blame into another, they're not taking accountability for their behavior. They're not owning their shit, so to speak. They're not taking ownership of
Yeah.
their role that they're playing in it, and that they're not there for support and to help develop and fix. It's more of a blaming than this is, let's fix this. Let's make this work. Let's
And
figure
that
this way out together. Let's figure through it.
and that's why I broke down in tears when I talked about my staff. It's because I don't want them to think like walking off a job is appropriate. And I also
Hmm.
don't want to leave them in the lurch in terms of all of a sudden I'm not there and what are they supposed to do? I
Did you
wanted I
did you
wanted
struggle with that? Sorry.
I wanted to give enough runway so that I'm not throwing them into the deep end and tying up as many loose ends as possible.
Yeah.
Other people have told me you should have just walked off the job.
Did you stay longer before you even made the decision to quit because of that? Like, was that an internal struggle within yourself of saying, like, I should be able to do this. I owe this to my team. I owe it to myself. Like,
It was an internal struggle, but part of me just didn't want to stoop down to their level.
well, I do want to wrap up from Jenny, and just in terms of like
Yeah.
that experience and what you've went through, like, how would that change like the next time, or how would or do you need more time for yourself to heal through it before you can actually go back, uh, trusting yourself again, or just kind of coming out of this, what's still resonating with you, and what's like where you were stronger?
I think I'm very proud of myself for sticking up for myself.
Mhm.
But I don't think I'll ever fully trust a manager.
I would totally agree with you. If I've gone through your experience, like I would have the exact same type of feeling. And I'm really props to you, hug
Mhm.
you from far, like trying to hug you. But like you did a great job. Like that was a really hard thing to do, like speaking up for yourself
Mhm.
and be able to kind of have an idea where you want to head to, like in the situation, even the decision that you're making. So I think that is a really, really strong, the strength of you that's playing obviously in the
Mhm.
situation. So
And
really, really kudos to you, Jenny.
Thank you.
You chose yourself at
Yes.
the end. At the end of the day, you chose yourself.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that's hard,
Exactly.
especially like when you count on a job or others are counting on you. I had a toxic work environment, and it was just very surprising to me. That initial shock that Jenny mentioned was also something I experienced. Just a little bit of backstory. I had started my career in finance, and I made a decision to move into technology. And as technology was becoming more innovative and thought leader and wanting to be a part of this, I pivoted my career and I started working as a team lead for a customer success and customer support team. And I came to the big organization. I was supporting just one of their product lines. And I was mid-career, mid-level management, and I expected at a certain place in life, a certain age, they've had a number of life experience, married for several years, or someone runs a department. There's a certain unspoken expectation that this person has experienced. And in my mind, it was very obvious someone at that place in life wouldn't behave in such a way. Like I would be careful what I say to a 20-year-old, not a 40-year-old, because I know it won't be taken out of context. I know that it would be face value or understood as it should be. So I'm coming into this role expecting this type of behavior from my peers, not thinking this wouldn't be the case. So, new into this job, I literally entered a boys' club. This was the engineering team dictated the entire behavior of the entire organization. And it was literally like in a boys' locker room or frat house. And senior level management either was a part of it or turned a blind eye to it. Now, again, I didn't realize this until after the fact. So then I had married men in the organization that were my peers or more senior making rude remarks to me. And we're at a happy hour. This married man grabs my hand and he goes, "Let's get out of here." And I'm like, "Excuse me? What makes you think that is okay? How does us talking, getting a little personal, mean that I'm going to go out with you and leave with you as a married man?" It was such a big disconnect in my head, and I didn't understand what was going on in the situation. And I was just really taken aback. Wait, this guy thinks I'm going to hang out with him, sleep with him, be inappropriate with him, or I don't even know what he was thinking. We've had coffee a few times, we've chatted, but by no means does that mean that I'm going to be inappropriate in a workplace. Didn't think much of it. And then the behavior became very apparent. I started to ask questions to other girls and to other women. And what I found out was these guys had a private Slack channel and a WhatsApp channel, a text, and talked about all the women. Who's sleeping with who they think is going to give it up. And we're talking about married men who have daughters that are teenagers. We're not talking about a 30-year-old single guy. We're talking about people who have actual families, who have grandchildren. I was shocked. I couldn't even process it and accept it. It was such a hard thing for me to digest. And the bad behavior was rewarded, and the people who got pulled into it were the ones who suffered, who were the ones who got talked about. So I became this girl who was easy, so to speak, because I said hello to someone in an elevator, or when they had coffee, I said, "How was your weekend?" And that turned into, "Oh, Tova's into me. Tova wants to fuck me. Tova will take anyone who
Wow.
shows her attention." And it wasn't just me, all the other women. And what really was the biggest blow or eye opener, when my department head saw the behavior and didn't do anything. Mm-hmm. She oversaw the department and she was a part of that. And that's when I came to the understanding of, if leadership isn't changing this, it's never going to change. And there are much more important things that I could be busy with my time than be interested in somebody else. I really don't even have energy for that.
I'm
It's
like totally shocked right
unfortunately,
now. I'm totally
I think
shocked.
it's a generational thing because I've certainly come up in situations like that where particularly older married men would make very inappropriate comments and gossip and unfortunately convey very similar sentiments and exhibited very similar behaviors as well. But I honestly think it's generational because I've certainly managed young men and talked to, worked with, or had younger male colleagues, and I don't get the sense that with the younger generation that is acceptable. I don't know, Cleo. What are your thoughts?
Yeah,
I managed a global team of 12 people. I ran a department and they thought they were smarter. We would have beer kegs and like girls would come and they'd be like, oh, I would tap that, like tap. And they thought we didn't realize what they were talking about. Oh, I mean the tap on tap, the beer tap. No, actually, that's not what you meant. You're being
Right.
disgusting in front of us,
mm,
and that's not okay. And I called behavior out and I got mocked. I got, oh, she just wants me or she just, is into me.
yeah. To Jenny's point, from my generation, the millennial generation, I call that sexual harassment. I called it. It's a sexual harassment. Regardless, it's a sexual remark. It doesn't matter. Whatever we call it, it's very apparent to me and maybe to our generations that we should speak, at least from females' perspective, we're speaking up about this. This is not okay. We're escalating to HRs and things like that. Like sometimes joke could be a joke, but when he went overboard, like in Tova's case, that is not okay. That's absolutely
It
not
was rampant.
professional.
And actually, one guy was super inappropriate. He was married. He was inappropriate to his subordinate. And they moved him to another floor. She actually put a case with HR. She ended up leaving the firm and he got moved to another floor.
Yeah. A lot of like the Me Too movement starting a couple years ago, now carrying over to even the nowadays, right? So it's the older stories that has happened to women and men and women in the past now are being brought up to this stage right now. And a lot of women are really stepping forward and voicing their experiences about certain men in their work career that has done something that's unprofessional to them. And
And
it's
like Jenny said, the organization knew they did nothing. This guy got moved to a different floor. He's still there. Guess what? There's other women that report to him and other women that are on the floor. So the behavior, and that's when I was like, I don't want to grow my career in a company, in an environment that supports and doesn't stand up. Silence to me is complicit when it comes to egregious behavior like this, especially in
in
a
terms of that, yeah, in terms of the head of the department, it's a female, and she did not do anything about it. She doesn't want to rock the boat, I'm assuming, which
no.
to me that's very hurtful from a female perspective. I would
She
say
and
if
I,
from my perspective, is like I have a senior leadership person, she's a female, and this is what's going on around me. If I express it to her, at least like she can do something about it, or she will. I mean, she knows what's going on for sure, and
yeah. Oh yeah,
just the fact that she's not
100%.
able to stop in it, or like just still going on, become worse and worse. That's I. I don't know if I would express this in the right way, but not doing something sometimes is a crime.
Understandable, but there's always that fear, right? And it's
Mm-hmm.
rampant. 99% of us need to work to have food on the table and keep a roof over our heads. And I've seen this so many times where they would rather turn a blind eye and not do anything versus potentially opening up a Pandora's box and then get themselves into trouble. And it's just like a headache that they don't need.
And this was it celebrated. the junior guys to the organization wanted to be accepted. So they carried in the same behavior to be a part of that inner circle. So people who you'd meet one-on-one wouldn't act like that, but then in the group, they acted like that because they wanted to be included. So I don't think necessarily that they would have that behavior, but then in order to be in the in crowd, to get more get seen, to get put on the good projects, to get, visibility, you ended up behaving that way. They started learning more about the organization. Like the engineering head, the head of product, they saw this, they knew this. And sometimes they joined in like a chuckle or a laugh. They're on the Slack channels. They don't allow any women on the Slack channels so they could talk about them. That's a problem for me. They have these
Yeah.
WhatsApp chats where they discuss work things outside of work. Like there was no boundary between work and personal and appropriate sexual inappropriateness. And I also found out from the sales team, a few of the guys would get the girls drunk and bring them back to their hotel room. It was such a disbelief that in today's day and age, and also I expected more from people that were more senior, especially someone who's married, who has a family, who has teenage daughters or kids in college. I held them to a higher standard. I really do. I expected more from them, especially in a workplace. I expected more from the work. And I don't think I was asking too much of the workplace. And when I saw like speaking up just made me worse, becoming the target of a lot of the bad behavior. And I ended up stop doing things because I just didn't want to be around it. And I'm like, that's not a way to be in my work life. I
Yeah.
don't want that. When I have to start avoiding things that actually are going to help me in my career and start participating in things in organization where I can add value, but I'm not because of who's going to be there, that's when I'm like, what am I doing for myself? And I found another role, but that was COVID.
Mm-hmm. Wow. I think going back to what I was asking Cleo from the millennial perspective, Cleo, have you experienced any type of behavior with men your age in the workplace?
I was I personally have not experienced anything that's sexual in that nature. But I've heard when I was still in my finance jobs earlier in my career, is that I heard a girl told me the male coworker, like they sat next to each other. They were their coworker in the same team. They have a good bonding, I'd say, but it's more like professional bonding. Like the guy's a little bit senior, and I think from that perspective, he just like kind of just joking. And they were like talking about food or something. He was having something on his hand. He just like, you can lick my hand.
Oh my goodness.
I the girl told me about it. I was like, what? That is it was
Gross.
like in that moment for her, it's like um it was like they're joking around about something. That's why he made a comment about like lick off my hand or something, right? And to me, that's like a big no-no. And she said like fuck off, like to him directly. Against jokey environment, but that's not an appropriate thing to say to a coworker, period, in a workplace. And
Yeah.
especially my friend is like a Middle Eastern culture. So it's not only sexual, but also culturally as well.
And again, like when I would tell the guys or like, you have the wrong idea, it was twisted of, oh, I turned Tova down, but she was hitting on me. And the guys would talk to each other as if the girls weren't existing. Oh, I know this girl would sleep with me. She's, she hits on all the men. It was so disgusting. Bad behavior is bad behavior. I don't care who it's
Yeah.
from, what it's from. It's not okay.
What's your perspective about male leaders in the organization or male subordinates?
So this is where I had to struggle and ask myself and really take the time So I let this define and shape me. Do I behave differently because such men exist, right? Do I stop being myself? Do I stop participating in things because of this behavior? And I said, I'm not going to stop being myself, but I also have to know if someone takes it the wrong way, I need to step away. I have to be very clear of, you don't get to have my time. I don't engage with you. I don't talk to this person. So I think moving into the next role and where I'm at now is because of this experience is I'm not reactionary. I'm more very clear up front of this is okay and this is not okay. So I don't have to now respond to something, but it's very clear where I stand.
Do you
And
think from a
I
guy's
totally
perspective? Oh, do you think from a guy's perspective, do you think does guys have those clear boundary defined as female like us? Like you clearly define your next role, how like what you should be doing, what you should not be doing, or like what's good for you and what's not good for you. For guys, do you think they ever have that clear boundaries?
I think it depends on the guy. And I'm not speaking for all guys, but I think with guys, I think there's more of how much could I get away with, and they try to push the envelope. And then you'll have good, upright citizen, right men who were just like, that's not okay. And
Yeah,
I think it's based on environment in terms of how they grew up, how they were raised, how they, perceive. And then also in the organization, I think a big part is the organization that sets the
yeah,
tone. Because even if a guy was that way, but the organization had zero tolerance, they wouldn't.
absolutely.
I just think about like Tova, you and I have talked about this where people spend a minimum of 8 hours every workday at work. And it's a shame that these types of experiences really inhibits people from really bonding because there's that danger of being sucked into that trap.
And I saw it with the new people and people who wouldn't behave. And I've had conversations with them, work conversations, were very respectful. And then in the group setting, like we were trying to become more cohesive organization, and we try to do things that improve people's experience at work. And it was just disgusting. And I was like, I can't even be around this. I did try to do things to change the culture. I did a volunteer committee. I hosted different events. We played a sports, and I was hoping in these like more different kind of settings, it would allow for people to be seen and heard in a different way, and allow people to now view people and get to see them versus being identified by either where the department that they worked for, the team that they worked for, their manager that they worked for, and actually got seen for themselves. It did change a little bit, but at the same time, when I saw that leadership wasn't going to do anything about it and it just was a continuation, I was like, I don't want to be spending my time in. And I found another job. I left for another role.
So, with that, Tova and Cleo, what is the conclusion in terms of these toxic workplaces and how to improve them? Because they seem to be so commonplace.
I'll go first. For me, regardless of the environment, I know what's right and wrong. What's my moral compass? What's my ethical boundary? What is okay for me? At the end of the day, when I have to answer for myself of saying, hey, I'm going to be a part of this. I want to be, I'd be embarrassed to be like, these are my coworkers, right? Like, and that's the decision that I need to choose for myself. So like, when I think about my surroundings, it's up to me to decide, do I want to be a part of it or not? How do I want to handle myself? And being very clear within myself of what I'm okay with is really helps me understand the reaction, the behavior that follows it. So speak up, walk away, disassociate, set the boundary. But at the end of the day, like I have to be sure that I know that what I did was within my framework of what I deem as okay. And, so that means speak up and defend someone, leave a job as a result of it, or put my foot down. And that's really where I'm coming out from, those experiences of saying how I'm going to act and how I'm going to allow myself to be treated, the others around me, and how I respond to these things.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I think for me, it's really speak up and make sure you wrap up your situation in a good place, at least for you, that you feel comfortable, that you feel good about, rather than leaving things hanging in the blue. So or in the gray area. So I think that's the most important thing for me.
Yeah. And going to what Cleo said, like, in her situation, like being very logical and taking out the emotion and the drama to respond and being very like, that's not okay. Or what do you mean by that? Or I don't think that's where this is the right time and place to have this conversation. And just to be very matter of fact,
Yes.
like don't overreact. Like I think that was a really good point Cleo made. And that's kind of my takeaway. So when I set the boundaries, just very matter of fact, this is what it is.
It's funny you say about matter of fact and keeping the emotions out of it, because my story, I got very emotional, but I think also I let it go on for too long. It was like a volcano exploding. But that said, I try to be as professional as possible in terms of not openly attacking in a public forum this person, and also being very respectful to my team. And just, in fact, on Slack, this person bid me farewell on my last day, to which I responded, "Best of luck to you. I learned a lot from you, and I hope our paths cross again."
Very mature,
So,
Jenny. Love that. Love that professionalism.
so
Love that.
And in the background, be like, fuck this bitch.
well, yeah, I mean, I
Right.
learned a lot. I learned what not to do, certainly. But on that note, ladies, I think this has been an amazing conversation about toxic workplaces. I know it's a very universal topic. And just telling our stories and not be fearful and to help each other process these emotions, I think is very beneficial. So until the next episode, where we're going to dig deep into another hot topic, thank you,
Yes.
everyone. And until next time.
Until
Thank
next
you all.
time.
Really.
All right.
Bye,
Bye.
See ya.
guys.